Hello and welcome to this video. Today I'm going to make some more resin keycaps. This is already part 3, so to speak, of this kind of project. So I'm not going to show the resin stuff, I'm just going to show me making the little things that go inside of them. Starting off with this little Pokemon design, starting with like brown clay, just throwing them out into different sized boards, pressing them flat, and then adding different colored stripes and boards on top that I'm pressing flat to get this little bear shape. And then for the mouth I'm choosing some darker pink layered with some lighter pink, and then I'm going to cut out and form the shape that I need before adding that very carefully with the tip of my knife blade. These things, the sculptures that go into the keycaps are very small, so it's really easy to accidentally smush something, so I'm working really carefully and honestly not focusing much on being like in frame with the camera, which is what happened with the first part, but you know, I think you can kind of get the gist of how this one started. And for the background, as I said, I'm not going to show how I made the bases. I'm basically always starting out with a thinner layer of resin that barely covers like the bottom part, and sometimes it's colors, most times it's colors, and then I'm going to put on the design I made. And in this case I chose this like light blue color as a background because I thought it would match the oranges and browns really well. And here you can see it demolded, but it still needs cleanup and sanding, but the clear part on top turned out really well, so I'm super happy with that. The next design is also going to be another Pokemon design. I really love Mimikyu, so I decided to make a Mimikyu keycap for myself. And space constraint wise, I wanted to have the cute head details. I was first debating if I should make like the full body, but I think the head alone is already more than cute enough. So I'm starting out with some balls of clay and then some snakes of different colors that I'm adding and trying to make look a bit like wonky and fabric-esque. And then I'm adding like a very thin snake of clay for the mouth before adding like a little bit more shape to it. And after smoothing everything out with some isopropanol on a brush, I'm baking this, and then I decided to paint on the rest of the details since they have like this like swirly, not quite clean look on the Mimikyu, like in the anime series and things like that. So I wanted to achieve that with just some acrylic markers, and it worked really well. For the background of this one, I chose a color shift color. And then for the next one, I wanted to make a little D&D inspired one, because I really love any kind of RPG. So I'm actually using one of the other Sophie and Toffee miniature dice molds, and since they're silicone, you can basically just put them in the oven in the mold, and that's precisely what I did. I just coated the unbaked clay with a little bit of the pigment, of the color shift pigment, pressed the molds together again to get the details back a little bit, and then I just baked it in the mold, and then when I pulled it out later it had almost the perfect shape. I did have to cut it flat, so I of course chose the side with the 20 up, and then I started coloring in the numbers with some copper color. I thought copper would match the green really nicely. And then I placed it inside of the little base dice mold. This is just a black background in this case with a little bit of this like purplish hue, glitter hue, and then I added this foggy coating on top. I decided to go a bit foggy because the background glue kind of smudged a little and I couldn't get it removed while it was in the mold. So to cover that, I decided to make the resin a slight bit milky that goes on top, and I think that works out really well. You can see the dye super well, and it almost looks like it's emerging from the dark fog, which actually makes me super happy that it worked out that way. And now for the last one, I'm going to make a little spaceship. This is a very random one, I just felt like making one. So I just went in with like a basic space cruiser design, so to speak. Starting off with this time just some grey clay that I'm going to fully paint. Because this thing would be so tiny and detailed, I decided it was easier to just use some basic Sculpey medium. And then once I baked it, it was time to paint, and these details were so tiny that my tiniest brush actually, like even before I could paint some of the parts, the paint would dry on the brush, so I had to water the paints down a little bit for this to work. I'm mostly using Vallejo game and model colors. I really like them, but they definitely dry super quickly, which is great when you're painting a miniature, because you can go right in with the next color without having to worry of like rubbing or smudging anything off. But in this case it definitely didn't make things easier. But luckily watering down, since they're so pigmented, doesn't make any huge changes. So I'm just adding like all the details layer by layer, trying to like add some tiny windows, some lights and things like that. And I think in the end it turned out super cute. I'm definitely pretty happy with this. And for this one, the background should be a bit more starry night-esque, since of course that is on space. So I added a ton of glitter to a very basic black background before I'm going to add the little space herb in. You can kind of see the glitter went and flown on top a little bit where it settled, and that's just because the glitter is super fine, and I also put the molds in my vacuum pump every time before I put them to curing, because there's so many little details and you want the peg in the middle to be perfectly sturdy, so it actually like holds on the keyboard well. My first ones I made didn't really that much, so when I made them the second time I made sure like the fox and the space keycap I made actually have those sturdy pegs, and they've lasted super well till now. I've not been using any other keycaps so far, and they're still going very strong, and I still love them quite a lot. One thing I definitely noticed while molding this one was that there were more and more air bubbles every time, even though I very thoroughly made sure to put them in the vacuum pump and carefully drizzling in the resin. And looking at the mold, like there was definitely mold fatigue going on. The mold, like the inside became less shiny, and I guess that's why the little bubbles could gather on the sides of the mold, and that's what, you know, made them be more visible. And of course it happened with all the darker ones. The first one was kind of fine still. The second one already got worse, and then you can see how progressively worse and worse it gets, and that's just wear and tear from the mold, because the first cast I made from my first keycap wasn't quite smooth. And if you have even a tiny bit of a rougher surface, the resin can cling to it when you demold, and then it can like slowly over time get worse, and this is what happens here. So I definitely have to, in the future, make a new mold, which I'm not too mad about anyways, because there was a tiny gap on the side. But I still think they look super cute, and I'm debating on how to fix this. I think to get them clear I may have to add like a little bit of a varnish coat, because the white stuff is the, you know, standing stuff. You couldn't really see any of the tiny air bubbles once I unmolded them, but now, you know, after the sanding you definitely can. I tried soaking them in alcohol, and as you can see that only had a minimal effect. So I'm gonna leave it for now and work on that in a little bit later, and hopefully I'll have an answer for you guys on how to fix this, like in a future video. But for now, again, I'm super happy with how all of them turned out. I love how the background of the Mimikyu, like, yes, it is like psychic power-esque feeling. The stars from the Space Herb one definitely work really well, and the fogginess for the dye definitely, I think, fits really well. I'm just sad that I spilled the glue and couldn't like clean it up as well, but it's definitely in this case I think more of a feature, since it's spilled really evenly and it just looks foggy. Just really like the dye is, you know, either being thrown in water or swimming in water or like emerging out of the fog. And I think it looks actually excellent. And I also really love this like calm background of the Teddy Ursa. I think it's also super, super cute. I wish that I could have added some more clean details for like some of the lines, especially when I work with the colored clay. Like the moon and the ears, I wish I could have gotten them a bit better, but the like swirly parts, as well as the little smile of the Mimikyu. But considering how tiny these sculptures are, I'm actually still super, super happy with all of that. Anyways, as always, let me know in the comments down below what you think of these designs, and which design is your favorite, and if you would make a keycap, which design would you make? I'm definitely planning to, again, make a new version of the mold, and this time with more compartments. I want to have like the 4 compartments all at once, so I can make things like arrow key or WASD keys and things like that all at once. And I want to slowly turn some of the keys on my keyboard into some really cool new keycap keys. And as always, I hope you will have a great day. See you next time. Bye bye!